And you mentioned your own childhood, and it's probably fair to say you didn't have the most conventional of childhoods. What are your abiding memories of your childhood? What really stands out for you?
Um, I think what stands out is how much my mom loved me, and even though at the time you don't know that it's chaotic because you don't really know any different. And so she was always there. We did a lot of moving around in England, and after Keith died and we moved here. But as far as a small child, I mean, there was a certain amount of excitement because I think as a child, with the chaos and having parents that were very young and always a lot of people around, especially my very first memories are of Tara. I don't remember anything before Tara House. Um, I see pictures of the houses and they sort of look familiar. And Mum used to talk about the different homes and the couple of places we lived before that and the pub that they had and speakeasy and those things. But I don't remember any of that. But I remember Tara quite well. And I remember really liking it there. It had giant grounds. My Uncle Dermot is only 8 months older than me. So we're very close in age. My mum and my grandmother were pregnant for about a month at the same time. So yeah, anyway, so we did a lot of exploring there. It was a very unusual house. It had this strange, like sunken living room, which you didn't see. I'd never seen anywhere else. And we had a room that we shared. And there was one room that was the bar that had superheroes all over one particular wall. And back in the 70s, it didn't really ever get incredibly hot, but there was a big heat wave one summer, and I remember Dermot being out in the garden too long. That's my uncle's name, and he got a heat stroke of some sort, and he thought all those characters were moving around and coming towards him. But that was sort of Keith's bar room. But no, but unfortunately, yeah, what that stands out is there was a lot of drinking, so which meant there was a lot of, I think, sort of unusual behavior by the adults around me. I did mention my grandmother, his mum. And he came from an incredibly normal family. My nanny and my granddad and his two sisters. He's the eldest of three. He has two sisters, and he had a very normal upbringing. My mum, not so much. Her parents were both very heavy drinkers and a lot of fighting going, a lot of moving around. She lived in Africa for a while. My granddad had a tea plantation on my mum's side, so that she kind of came from a bit of a chaotic background. And I think that's maybe how she was always able to perhaps shield me a little bit more from the strangeness of what was going on. Like I was not allowed to come out of my room sometimes, and things were often very loud musically. But I do the most fun times that I can really remember. Well, I mean, there was a lot of fun times, but of being around Keith because Keith was really often on tour. Not, I mean, at the house for a while, but then gone for a long time. But I think we only lived there for about 2 years before we actually finally left. Because unfortunately, I know, and unfortunately, I inherited this too. When he drank, he became a very different person, and I'm sure he's sort of famous for that. But unfortunately, it led to some violence at home, not towards me, but towards my mom. I didn't witness a whole lot of it. Like I said, my mom was pretty good about keeping me away from all that. But it was sort of there in the background, and so there was a bit of fear. And I think as he wasn't around as much, we didn't have a lot of that closeness in between. So I was. We left a few times over the years when things got really bad, often in the middle of the night during a fight, get woken up. So there's a lot of living in hotels, to be honest. I'm very comfortable in hotels. Um, we lived in one called Great Foster's after we finally left, we lived there. We had to sort of hide because apparently I'm not sure what was going on. There's a lot of hearsay, things get blown out of proportion. But apparently that we were supposed to be hiding for some reason. It was going to kidnap us and take us back or something. But that so. No, there was that sort of thing, which isn't terribly normal, and going to school was I didn't really go very regularly, I suppose, and I was always late because my mom couldn't really get up early, and sometimes we'd have to take the bus because she didn't really drive in England. She hit a deer in Richmond Park. Who does? I know. Poor mum. She had a Morris Minor. It was a beautiful little green Morris Minor, and she was going. Ron Wood was my stepdad's best friend, well, best, at the time, I guess. Used to live at the Wick, and you had to drive through Richmond Park because we lived in Sheen to get there, and she hit a deer. So, but anyway, so she was never much of a driver. Even, I mean, when she was younger, she didn't drive at all. So. I would always get to school kind of late and have to like stay in detention, and it would make her so upset. She'd say, "It's my fault. I should stay." And she used to tell the teacher that. I was like, "No, it doesn't work that way, Kim." But anyway, so it definitely was. Now I look back on it, it was kind of very sort of chaotic and strange. But when you live in it, you don't really know that much different, except like I mentioned, going to Nanny's house, Keith's mom. And that was a lot of normalcy. And she would sort of bring it to my attention. We had a housekeeper named Liesel. She was German, and she used to take me home. Well, I think she only did it twice, but take me home for the weekend because she would say, "This is not normal. I just want you to know." And so, I was really too young to know what she meant, but I really remember it. I remember just being in her house and having dinner with her two sons, and they took me and bought me a toy, and like I exposed normal things. But I didn't know my life wasn't normal. So,
No, sure.
yeah.
I mean, you're not going to know that at that age, as you say. And yeah, can you remember when you first realised that your dad was famous?
Um, not it was not a clear one time image, but it was mostly going from school, and it's usually my teachers were usually more, they're going to be more impressed than the kids. But it was really how the teachers reacted to me, than more than other children. Yeah, and that's really the biggest, the t only time that I realized that something was different. It wasn't because I don't remember ever seeing The Who until I was older. I may have been there as a kid, but I honestly don't remember the Faces and the Stones because my stepdad was in the Small Faces and the Faces, and then he played on Some Girls and Tattoo You. So and he cheated on my mom a lot, so we followed him on tour all the time. So I've seen the Stones a lot as a kid, but I don't recall seeing the Who. So it wasn't that kind of moment, like seeing him on Top of the Pops or anything. It wasn't. It was more from like people coming around and talking about music and it would, but it really was more how I was treated by other kids in nice ways and bad ways, I suppose. Some people, I don't know if they're like whatever it is, they don't really know how to talk to you, or people want to be really friendly. Or then some people are just perfectly normal about it, which is fine. So you know, and, but it really was more the teachers. A couple
Yeah.
of in particular was like kept talking to me and asking me questions, and I mean, it was like, "Mom, what is this?" And I think that's when she told me why they were so interested. Because yeah,
Yeah, I guess that's just another element added on top of the fact that it's not a normal childhood because of, everything that's going on as you've described. And then you throw into the mix that your dad is actually very famous, and I guess people at school are treating you maybe slightly differently because of it. So,
yeah, and being dropped off like in the Rolls Royce and picked up, I didn't like that. I think I get that from Nanny too. Not really liking, I mean, it's fun to go to shows and, yeah, 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 hello, and this, that, and the other. And I enjoy meeting people. And, if they wanted to meet Keith Dorset, I think that's lovely. And I always tell him, he loved his fans. He loved what he did. He loved the band so much. I mean, I can't say that because I knew him so well, but just everything over the years, everything you read about him, everything Mum said about him too. And I wish she was here to talk about him really more than me. Obviously, she knew him a lot better, but yeah, yeah, it was but like you said, it's those sort of things put together that but then you get a little bit older and you realize, oh well, that's why it's not. It's different at my friend's house. I used to love going to my friends' houses to stay because it was so normal. I really did want normal. So when my kids were born, I really wanted normal. my drinking interfered with normal, but luckily everyone's okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. And were there any of Keith's friends that you particularly remember interacting with during your childhood at all? Because I'm sure there were probably quite a few of them would have come round to Tara and maybe some of the other places you lived.
Yeah, well, Harry Nilsson, I do remember. He gave us an owl. He gave us a barn owl. I That is one of those weird things where you don't even know why you remember that so well. But there was a big, maybe Tara already had a bird structure, but there, well, I was little, so maybe not that big. But there was a big enclosure in the back that you could keep a bird in, and Harry Nilsson got him an owl, a barn owl, and had it for as long as like was until we left, I think. Um, and I do remember Ringo coming over because I do remember them being friends. Ringo was probably the friend we saw the most. Dermot and I made a little band with another friend. I can't remember who she was, another little girl, and we called ourselves the Lobsters. And we used to set up at the Garden Grove was a pub at the very end because Tara, there were two houses and then this really long driveway that had this pond that the purple Rolls Royce ended up getting driven into. But at the end of the driveway, there was a pub called the Golden Grove, and it had a hill behind it. And Dermot and I set up. I think he played drums, and I think I played a keyboard, which I don't play, but a little plastic one. We were about 6 or 7 or something, and I remember we were called ourselves the Lobsters because we said, well, because the Beatles were my mum's favorite band. She was a Beatlemaniac, back when she was a teenager, young teenager. And we said, well, if there can be insects like the beetles, then we'll have, seafood, we'll have the lobsters. And he remembered, like years later, we ran into Ringo and he says, how are the lobsters? Oh, we broke up. But yeah, I remember him being lovely. The I don't remember the other members of the Who at all from childhood. I remember them from times I've met them over the years with mum at shows and other things, usually with my mum. But I really don't. There could be people I met that I don't that I just don't remember due to my age. But Harry Nilsson and Ringo are the ones that stick in my mind the most.